This is Jackets Debrief, a show about the Columbus Blue Jackets, the National Hockey League, and part of the Hockey Podcast Network. Welcome everyone to Jackets Debrief here. You know what? Some days you just don't care as much about sports as you did before. Some days you love them. But you know what's there every day that you do care about sports? DraftKings. Yep, got free-to-play pools, got all sorts of wonderful ways to win money, prizes, all that good stuff. Go to DraftKings.com, download the top-rated DraftKings app now. Use promo code THPN when you sign up to get your free shot at up to $10,000 in total prizes every day of the basketball playoffs. Head to the DraftKings Pools page to get your shot at huge cash prizes. That's promo code THPN for limited time only at DraftKings. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for full details. All right, folks. We are back in the sadness again. So we're going to start with Beer of the Week. I've got Oberon here from Bell's Brewery in Comstock, Michigan. There we go. Going to give this a drink. Now, last week, mostly we talked about that JD was back. And great. Look at how awesome this is. We've got this awesome guy back, and he's the guy who really kind of got things going for us. And, it was a good feel-good show. It's a feel-good show. I don't know what show this is going to be. Could be a feel-good show. May not be. Got a nice American ale coming up here. Nice wheat ale. Ooh, look at that bad boy. Yeah, this Oberon. It is a American wheat ale. Very good. Very good. I enjoy it. It's kind of sweet, but not that overpowering way. Good beer. The beer you can drink during the summers. Perfect for this time of year. Barely feels like summer in Ohio just yet, but we're getting there, folks. All right. Let's start where it's going to start. With the news that was shared on Friday night or on a Saturday night.
Elliott, Columbus. Seth Jones, Chris started this conversation a couple of weeks ago. Well, we can tell you that sometime in the last week or so, Seth Jones informed the Columbus Blue Jackets that he will not be re-signing. Now, I'm saying for now at this point, because I don't like to deal in absolutes, but it does appear as if he is prepared to test free agency, and we'll see how Columbus decides to handle this over the next little while. Elliott.
All right. So, that's where we're at, folks. It looks like the Columbus Blue Jackets have another high-profile guy ready to walk out the door. Just got to throw your hands up at this point. As Blue Jackets fans, I'm with you in that I hate it. I don't know what's going on. Because a lot of people wanted to blame Torts for guys wanting to leave. Well, Torts is gone and somebody still wants to leave. People wanted to blame how the Blue Jackets negotiated contracts. Maybe there's something going on behind the scenes, but he's not even opening up the negotiation. And there wasn't, if you remember when Seth Jones signed his last deal, his RFA deal with us, there wasn't some long drawn out problem. We didn't have issues with him on signing a contract. So he just wants to go. I don't know what it is. If some guys just don't like the city, there's not much that can be done about that. You're not, tearing down the city and rebuilding it for the sake of a few hockey players. Maybe it's just something where things are going to get paid more elsewhere. And maybe he would. I don't know. I have a hard time thinking it's going to be a lot different. But that's where we are. Seth Jones wants out. And when I saw this on Twitter, and then I saw you seeing the news, people talking about it, this is where I'm at right now. This team Is this thing alone enough to make me say, you know what, we're not doing a reload anymore? I think they should be going for a rebuild. Not particularly. This is why I say that. We know that internally the Blue Jackets think very highly of Seth Jones. But, I mean, unless you're just haven't been following along with the analytics community on Twitter, there's a lot of people who think Seth Jones is vastly overrated. I've actually seen many people who are more analytically minded talking about how this is going to work out great for the Blue Jackets because they have an asset in Seth Jones that is valued very highly around the league, and that they think the team isn't really losing that much, and that they'll definitely win the trade because they're going to get more pieces, and that Seth Jones will be overvalued. I think Seth Jones is a really good defenseman. I think Seth Jones is the kind of player that, yeah, you want to stick on your top pair with Zach Werenski, and you want that to be your top pair for the next, still another 7 or 8 years of that. But that's not going to happen. Now, this is where I think things get different. They also want to start talking to Zach Werenski. Now, Zach Werenski's an RFA, so it's not as easy for him to just be like, okay, I want out. But if you're not getting Werenski, if when you start talking with him about re-signing a deal, if he's not talking about, a deal of 5 or more years, then I think we look very heavily at, okay, now we go into rebuild mode. Now we start trading away assets. Now we start kind of starting over again. So we'll have some more detail here in a second. I'm going to do a quick word from our friends at the Hockey Podcast Network, and we'll be right back.
Hey, hockey fans, I'm Breezy.
And I'm Ray Ray. We host the House of Hockey podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network.
We're lifelong hockey fans who talk about the game and the lifestyle. Our guests include professional hockey players.
My rookie party had to wear Speedo, and then we had a checklist of stuff we had to do.
Here we go, Gaber. What do you got to say? And it's kind of like, you know better than that now, boys.
I got dressed for the Bruins. Get a phone call. He's like, dude, we need you over here by the elevator. You got to get downstairs. You got to get dressed right now.
Started playing the dun, 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 and I turned it around and it had the Olympic rings and said we did it.
NHL team hockey reporters.
I actually took the Stanley Cup to this ice bar where they've got now girls around them, and I've got a fur coat on.
I wonder who he shoot checked over here. And then I looked down at my feet.
Hockey fans.
The entire bar was lined with guys in Kings jerseys. We quickly realized, oh my gosh, this is the dad's trip.
And we bring unique hockey stories to light.
Coming back to England, 24 rates in the entire country. That's where the problem starts with the sport of ice hockey here.
Canadian Blind Hockey Association, those few kids we interviewed, their whole week is built around Sunday at the rink. They're just hockey players.
We don't agree on everything.
Pineapple goes on pizza.
No, it does not.
I think it does.
But we do agree that there are many people and places that build the House of Hockey.
New episodes every Tuesday. Come on in to the House of Hockey podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network.
All right, folks. So there was other stuff I was going to talk about on the show as well, but the Seth Jones news really kind of just goes over everything else. How does this affect things? You already got my take that I'm not sure if I'm going from reload to rebuild until we have unless we have a problem with Zach Werenski. I mean, where we're at right now, this team has 3 first-round picks, and a lot of draft cap money to use going into next season. Now, theoretically, this team might have something else up their sleeve still. I mean, again, if the Blue Jackets make a trade and get the next 5 years of Jack Eichel, does that change what Seth Jones wants to do? I don't know. What I do find really interesting is, just as quickly as a week or two ago, Jarmo Kekalainen was talking about, well, even if Seth doesn't sign a new deal, we're going to probably keep him through the year, that sort of thing. And then today, when John Davidson was asked about the situation, he said, first of all, he was going to keep private conversations private, which is just totally normal. I mean, you wouldn't you wouldn't be able to have very frank and honest, open conversations with players and agents about their plans if they thought you were going to turn around and blab about it to somebody else. So I get why they're doing that. But he sounded a little different. He said, we are definitely going to do what's best for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And made it sound like more of a trade was on the table as far as that goes. And I see the logic in that because I think it was even JD that talked about, the difference with the Artemi Panarin situation now is when they had Panarin, they thought we can make a run at a cup. And that was a good team. They hit a good team in Boston and lost in 6, but that was a good team. That was a team to take a shot with. When you look at the team you have now, this isn't a team to take a shot with. You've got, what do you do here? And it's tricky. Because we don't really know where to go from here. Now, from what I understand, this year, Seth Jones does have a modified no trade clause, but the condition on that is he can submits a list of 10 teams he cannot be traded to. So, that's still the majority of the league. And he knows it's only for 1 year. He knows it's not that he has to go sign a long-term deal with them. So, all the teams that are going to be interested in Seth Jones, he's probably going to be willing to accept the trade to. Because I doubt he's taking a bunch of winning teams off the list. He's probably leaving on like Buffalo, Detroit. Because if it's 1 year, he probably wants to take a shot at winning. And those are the teams that are going to be willing to pay. Detroit's not going to be willing to pay anything for him because obviously that's not what they want. That's not the kind of asset they need. But it allows, it's a weird situation. Now, if Werenski says he wants to go too, if you can't get Werenski, because again, right now he's got 1 more year on this deal than he has an RFA deal. If he doesn't show a willingness that he wants to sign a long-term deal, which he's getting to the point in his contract where he's got RFA arbitration rights. At that point, I think you start blowing things up because then you're talking about rebuilding because you don't have a number 1 defenseman. You don't have a number 1 center. All you've got is goaltending. So I am all aboard at that point rebuilding. The reason right now I've always felt like they're closer than a lot of people think is they've got the number 1 defenseman in either Seth Jones or Zach Werenski. Now, some people might argue with me on saying Seth Jones is the number 1 defenseman. Again, as we talked about, the stats community seems a little split on that, but you got the number 1 defenseman. You've got good starting goaltending in Elvis Merzlikins. But you're missing that number 1 center. So if you can trade and get that number 1 center, I think all of a sudden you're a competitive, decent, good team. You've got some of those needed pieces, but you're not going to have that. If Zach doesn't want to stay, then you're down to just the goalie and then you're starting over again. But the thing is, if you're the Blue Jackets, I know this isn't something fans want to hear, but I think they have okay setups in either situation. If they're still in reload mode after this, if say they get Zach Werenski signed to a long-term deal and say, you know what, we're still going to be in reload mode. Still got 3 first-round picks. Still got some young talent you could trade from. We haven't discussed it yet, but there are going to be some interesting options in free agency out there. So we'll see where that goes. But I think you can reload. Now, if you have to rebuild, that's a horse of a different color. But here's the thing. With that, we're running into a situation of if we rebuild, okay, what do we have to work with? Well, you're trading Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. You're getting at least a pick and a prospect for either one of those. My guess is with Zach Werenski, because he's still got RFA rights, you're getting a lot if he has to be traded, if you decide that's the way to go. After that, you've got Cam Atkinson. Now, Cam might be a trickier trade because he's a little older and he's got some term, but if you're a team that thinks, hey, we need some of those side pieces, honestly, a team that if the Blue Jackets are going to rebuild, again, this is all speculation, we have 2 players that the Edmonton Oilers would love to have on their team, and that is Cam Atkinson and Oliver Bjorkstrand. Now, if they trade Ollie, I will be crying in my beer. It will be a very sad day. I love Oliver Bjorkstrand, but I understand that if you have to do a rebuild, those are some of the calls you're going to have to make because those are the biggest names on the list still of who you could trade. And I see teams giving up, firsts for all these players, at least. Considering we got a first for Nick Foligno, we should be getting a first plus for any one of the guys I've mentioned so far. And you can rebuild around a relatively young core. And when I say young core, probably the oldest one of them is Jack Roslovic, who the team, he seems to love Columbus. I mean, he's a Columbus guy. I think he wants to be here forever. You could trade a Patrick Laine. That's definitely in the cards. But if you go into a rebuild, I think what you do, then your young core starts with Jack Roslovic, Eric Robinson, Igor Chinikov, Emil Bemstrom, Alexander Texier, and the defensive core you'd be completely rebuilding. So that's the thing. And this is a team that by definition would be going for, it'd be a lottery the next year too. But I don't know. So many things I think are still up in the air depending on what happens next. As I discussed, if they make a trade for, if they make some big move and get Jack Eichel in town, does that change what happens? Does that change the perception that does Seth Jones now say, wait, I think I want to win here. I think I can make this work. It could happen. The way the team was talking today, there's not animosity. There's not anger there. It's just they'd be willing to sign him, but it's just if things change. And things might change over the summer. Who knows? What I would say is Blue Jackets fans, guys, just be ready for things to change quickly. We haven't started talking about coaches yet. We've talked about other first round. We haven't talked about the centers that we could go out and get yet. The draft lotteries this week. I know there wasn't a show last week, midweek. I think we're going to try and get back into the swing of these. What you'll probably be seeing through the off season is back to 2 episodes a week, but maybe shorter episodes. But that'll be our game plan from here. But as of now, the big story this week, Seth Jones apparently is going to test free agency. When Friedman reported it, he reported it like he was hedging his bets, but it sounds like that's what Jones still wants to do. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes, folks. But hey, it is what it is. We're cycling. We're going through stuff. We'll see how it goes. I think we've got a smart GM that can help us navigate this and maintain a competitive team. And if it has to be a rebuild, we have not yet seen Jarmo rebuild a team from scratch. He kind of did that rebuild on the fly, taking a team that was, kind of a middle to lower middle of the pack team and turning him into a team that made the playoffs for 4 straight years. So we'll see what he does at this point. So thank you all very much for watching, listening, everything else, and go Jackets.
Please subscribe to the show, follow us on Twitter @JacketsDebrief, and thank you for listening.